Archaeologists. Though essential to building our knowledge of the Earth's history, it's a profession few people are truly aware of. We see the results of their decades of strenuous work in museums and textbooks, but they go unnoticed. My team and I traveled to Central Texas in order to find out what this career is truly about.
Archaeology is about looking at past human behavior. It's not about filling in museum cases or history books. It's not about finding artifacts. Those are all kind of hobbies we have. Yeah. It's about looking at human behavior in the past. Sociocultural anthropologists and sociologists look at human behavior in the present, and we put that together to try and model human behavior in the future. So it's about getting usable information about how humans think and make decisions for you for the future. That's our job. Yeah. It's to say, this is what we found here and this is what it means for you. If we dig the rest of our lives and we never write it up and we never figure out what it means, we've wasted our entire life, because that's not what archaeology is about. We've got two interwoven projects here. So the Galt School fully funds the prehistory research project at Texas State. So the Galt School is a nonprofit. Students from all over the world come to work with us to learn not just how to do this, but how to do the things that actually pay in archaeology, the things that we need skills in. So GIS, X-ray fluorescence, surveying, now remote sensing of various kinds, including drones, digital photography and manipulation. Those are all skills that archaeology pays for. Well, in the United States and Canada, archaeology is part of anthropology. For historical reasons that make no sense to anyone else in the world, but physical anthropology, archaeology, sociocultural anthropology, and linguistics were part of it. It's called the four-field system, and it was all part of anthropology. Everywhere else in the world, archaeology is a separate discipline, usually allied more closely with history and geology. Archaeology, its results show up in the humanities, but the process of archaeology is all hard science. So in the United States, they tend to put us in the humanities, which is bad, because one, we aren't eligible for any STEM funding, because we aren't a science. But I'm doing X-ray fluorescence, I'm doing, all our dating is done in nuclear labs, we're doing laser ablation, we're doing, God, I can't even tell you, paleomagnetism, all the stuff we're doing out there is hard science. But because our results end up going in a history book, they put us in the humanities. So it's a really unfortunate position to be in, and the rest of the world's kind of confused by it. It's not uncommon in Europe for archaeological institutions to get multi-million-dollar grants. The largest grant you can really get in the United States is about $200,000. The last one we got from the NSF was $214,000 over 2 years. So really only $107,000 a year.
If I were to do a double major, what's the best second major I could take that would help me with archaeology?
The best one? Right now, probably geography, because that's where they usually have GIS. I mean, here at Texas State, this is considered one of the top 10 geography departments in the nation. They have this huge Grosvenor National Geographic Institute here that pays for a lot of stuff, so they have state-of-the-art computer equipment and everything, but everything is done with GIS now. Now we can actually test a lot of these ideas, and you can test it with the computer, and you can actually redig an excavation from the ground up, including pictures and artifact placement and everything else. And we also look at placement overall of archaeological sites. And when somebody says, I got some stuff out on this ranch that I want you to look at, and they send me a couple of pictures and everything, one of the first things I usually do is bring up their GIS map and see what's been done in the area. And say, oh, okay, you're on this creek. Well, I can see upstream from you there was a highway put in, and they found like 5 archaic sites and a possible Paleo-Indian site, and downstream of you there was a bunch of things done. So I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to find in between those. And I also have a pretty good idea of how I can more narrowly define my search areas. But there's a lot of ranches, for instance, in Texas that you have almost no dirt. It's just a lot of bedrock showing through. There's going to be archaeology there, but it's all on the surface. That doesn't help me at all. Because you can have something that's 2,000 years old right next to something that's 9,000 years old on the surface. I need stuff that's buried in context. Yeah, here's some of Sergio's stuff. Those are those little tiny flakes. You can see Bill and Ice Points. He was doing a presentation, but you can see these teeny tiny little flakes that come out of those little things, and they get this weird little 3-dimension. We have artifacts in cabinets all over the place here. This is usually the stuff that's being processed one way or the other, either outgoing or incoming. We have stuff that's going out for curation. We have other projects in here. We test about 20 to 30 sites in Texas every year. Since you can't do experiments over, what archaeologists look for is patterns. So we need other sites like Galt. And to do that, as we say, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You dig a lot of holes because you're looking for stuff that's, you know, at Galt it's 14 feet down. This is Jennifer's stuff that normally she works on the refitting and everything else, and this stuff is all older than Clovis stuff. So this is all 16 to 21,000 years old. A lot of it is debris, although there's a biface there. That's a tool. As I go along, I think she's got the other ones locked up. There's a lot of demontage here, some blades. Here an engraver blade. Some blades, you can see some of the refits here. So, you know, teeny tiny flake to teeny tiny flake, or something like this big flake that fits onto a biface. You can see this one, you've got 3 pieces there that fit back together. Some of them don't articulate in a very large area. It might be a 1/4 inch that they fit on or whatever. She Mickey mouses around until she figures that out. And that could tell you a lot. We had a project we worked on down in San Antonio where we found all the debris from making a biface. They were probably working towards a projectile point. Biface is kind of the way you do that. You just work it down. Biface is, well, here's Sergio's experimental stuff. This is a big bipointed biface. In some places this would be considered a point. But you whittle it down and then you make a point out of that. And we had all the debris from making one of these, and we had half of a partly finished biface. And then in a unit 20 meters away, we found the other half of it. And it showed no signs of use wear or anything, so nobody had taken it over there to use it as a tool or whatever because it had a sharp edge. Somebody went, son of a, when it broke, and threw it. Because people are people. Yeah, you can see Sergio, who's normally here, who's down in Big Bend, is, besides working on that stuff I was showing there, is also one of our experimental nappers. So this is all stuff he's made. He's not trying to make an Andice bell or calf creek. What he's trying to make is the debris that we find from making this, right? And that's what, there's little boxes all over, but some of these are filled with bits and pieces of tools, and some of them are filled with, I don't think, just the debris. When we start getting the debris that looks like the debris we're finding archaeologically, then we know that he's making the same decisions to get to. That's how you learn all that stuff. That's how we can go in collectors, you know, it says, go, that's fake, that's fake, that's it. Because we'll look at it and they'll say, you know, well, I made a Clovis point. I'll say, I made a Clovis point, and I've got this Clovis point, it's real, I found it in my backyard, I'm going to sell it to you for $1,000. And I'll look at it, and oftentimes what they'll have is, they'll have a squared off edge right here. It's called a hinge fraction. And that's what happens when you do this last, when you thin this thing last, which is how most flint knappers think it's done. But what we're finding is when the bifaces are really large, they thin the bottom, and then later flakes obscure that and make it look smaller. So just by looking at that one little thing, that's not how people made Clovis points. That's a fake. That's a Folsom point. He's got a lot of different varieties here, and he's always playing with different rocks. It's got a ton of iron in it. It's a stone. It's a stone that's got so much iron in it that when you make something out of it, it comes across so it looks metal. They have that one with him. He's got a really neat point that you'd swear to God is a metal cast of a point, but it's not. It's made from a stone like that. Yeah, another one of those. It's a lot heavier than it should be.
Yeah.
You pick it up and go, whoa. He says it's tough to nap too, but really good tool. He's also the guy who does lithic drawings. So he does these, and he does them at very large scale, because in a book they show up about this big. So if you do it at a large scale and shrink them down, you don't see any of the minor things, but you can see as he's illustrating things here. But this is one of my incised stones, as a matter of fact. That's all you can see of the pattern because it has calcium carbonate all over it. Lots of different kinds of things going on here at any one. Robert is over there who does late Paleo-Indian stuff. Quig does a lot of stuff with archaic and actually was in CRM for years and knows the gray material more than anyone else. And that's all these publications that are published by the CRM companies that there's only like 20 copies of them. Nobody's really aware of what's in that data, but he had to deal with that, so he's very aware of all that local gray material. Nancy and Tom are off at a conference. They're giving a paper in California. Nancy is our lab manager and looks at Clovis flaking. Tom is one of the world's leading experts on Clovis blades and blade cores and does the XRF stuff. You asked what the paperwork looks like? These blue ones are all the paperwork from one excavation called Area 15 at Galt. And this is what the stuff looks like. This is a unit level record, and these are the upper ones. The upper ones don't have much to them. There's just a little bit of paper. But a unit level record has the area, the dates, the unit, the level. You can see the elevations, who worked there, everything about it, little map, and then there's continuing maps and so on that go on. As you go down, you get more and more paper. When you get down towards the bottom, there's a lot of paper. And this one, yeah, that's the summary of this particular 1x1 square as it went down. Wow. Right there, and it went down, what, 33 levels?
So do they always use the metric system?
We use metric, but not always. Biblical archaeologists have a tendency not to use it, and some historical archaeologists still work in feet. Drives everyone else nuts. We say if you put an English measurement on our form, we'll beat you within 2.54 centimeters of your life. So you will remember that. Nice.
It's easier, the metric system.
Well, and it's easier to train. So you can see as you get down, there's a lot more drawings and so on.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, this is a pretty thick chunk here with paperwork. That's just one level.
Wow.
So all of them are like that. So like I said, this is one area called Area 15. So there's 14 excavations before this with the same kind of thing. Most of those books are over there. A lot of that stuff, and you can see Area 15 artifact inventories down there, copies of field notes. So this is the Area 15 bookcase because that's what we're working on. Everything that comes in here actually gets washed again. It gets washed. There's a big sink outside our door, and it gets washed with a toothbrush and everything, unless it's going for further study, like U-sort studies or whatever. And it gets thrown on these drying screens. If it was point provenienced, it's got a bag with it with all that information on it. So all those artifacts. And you can see a lot of the stuff is little tiny flakes. That's debitage, you know. So you can see these are from a number of different sites here. We've got Howard and Lopalong and some Galt stuff being rewashed and other things going on at the same time. So after this, it goes to students and volunteers who do, they do kind of a triage. Yeah, I can pull one out here if you want to look at it. Here's a bunch of stuff here. But it goes through a triage where they divide it up into categories, and then we look over their shoulder, and then it starts going to specialists for different things. Now here, we had a hell of a lot of Rhabdota snails. Yeah, you've got a dirt sample for some reason. You've got some bone stuff, and that is a bone tool. That's just pretty cool. Probably a bone point. So I was going to say, first of all, this is going to be really high up. Yeah, it is. It's really high up. It's because we won't get bone very far down, and you get a lot of debitage. Like I said, they just go through that and divide it up. So different things go different ways. You can see other ones like Lopalong, which is a place they're testing. You got a lot of groundstone right now, which is really interesting. So these are manos. They go in a metate to grind up food. This is a pestle. So somebody was using that, and you can see different projectile points and so on that they got. And this is from their surface survey, I believe. Yeah, lot 22 of a ranch near Lampasas that they were just taking a look at. And they did find this stuff, a lot of stuff on the surface. So they did dig some holes there, and they found some subsurface stuff. And the people want to get an archaeological easement. They have a little bed and breakfast operation and some other things, and they want to get an easement to get anything with archaeology off the tax rolls. And so they encouraged us to do some further excavation. So we're doing some further excavation there. There's still a chance we could hit some Paleo-Indian. They got into early Paleo-Indian, but we haven't found anything earlier than that, so it doesn't look like it's going to have what we need, but we'll do some excavation for them, and they'll be able to get an archaeological easement. Get that taken off the tax rolls. So sometimes we do jobs like that all the time. When they were putting in a big power line from West Texas to bring in wind power into Central Texas, we had a lot of ranchers calling us, I don't want that damn power line on my ranch. You know, and you'd go out and you'd find some significant sites, and then their neighbor would call, I don't want that power line on my ranch. And it's almost a perpetual motion thing. Everything in the field goes through 1/4 and 1/8 inch screens. The 1/4 inch screens get picked out in the field. Pull out the stuff we want, get put in a bag. The 1/8 inch screens come back looking like this. It's called kibble. And this all gets washed again and rinsed and then spread out on those cafeteria trays, and we pick through it and pull out the teeny tiny little debitage in it and bone fragments and everything else, which gives us a clue of what kind of stuff is left there. And you end up with these little bags like this that's debitage too, and they're teeny tiny debitage. Yeah, kibble bag. This gives you an idea. This is about 1/3 of this stuff here. And when we look at, I'll pick a nice big one. Here's a nice big one. This is going to be an upper level somewhere. But this is what a unit bag looks like. So all the things in the little bags are point provenience, things that we got its exact location on Earth. And this is the debitage and angular chert is the other stuff in these bigger bags. And there's usually a mess of these in all of them too, because these are all removed from bag for study things. So all kinds of important things have been removed, and there's different colors for different people and so on. So all kinds of stuff's been removed from this and taken elsewhere. When we curate it, we have to keep track of all those tags because it's supposed to be curated in its final analysis stages, which means that if you pulled all the blades or all the gouges or all the awls or all the projectile points for a study, they have to stay together. But we have to have some indication where they came from too, so it's a lot of paperwork.
So the different files are
that's a lot of stuff,
different
isn't it?
specialists then?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Some of it, going to different people and different studies and so on. And it usually has the cabinets filled with all kinds of little ones, but this has got some of the bigger ones in it, like this is Alabates from Alabates National Monument, just north of Amarillo. And Alabates is rather famous because most of it is red with white streaks of quartz through it. It looks like bacon. Find Alabates, up to 1,500 miles away from Alabates National Monument. One of the first things found at Galt was an Alabates Clovis point, so that was more than 400 miles away from home. We find this stuff in North Dakota. We find another place. People were trading for this particular rock. So it's one of the early precious things that people liked.
So what did they use for it? Did they make...
They made everything out of it, all their tools out of it, yeah. I mean, all this stuff is chert. That's just a really flashy looking one, but most of them are a lot duller looking. Some of this stuff, this one's brownish inside. Really pretty, this Callahan Divide. It's got all this lovely, it almost looks like rust on the outside of it. But it wants to be clear. It's a cryptocrystalline silicate, it's silica crystals. So the minerals going through it are what gives it color. It's pretty porous actually. Most of what's in here, as I pick this up, about 60% of what I'm holding is air and water. Well, it would make a great tool. It breaks in a very predictable fashion and it's stronger than steel because of that grid. The only thing that it doesn't do well is you don't ever want to expose it to a lot of heat. If you put a chert nodule around a campfire and it starts warming up, it'll explode like a bomb because it's mostly air and water. And that air and water tries to get out as it heats up. And if you do it quickly, it just goes kaboom. And we actually had a burial of a young woman from about 4,000 years ago that was missing most of her foot, and there were some chert flakes embedded in the ankle. There was a chert nodule somewhere around the fire. Something went off like a grenade, blew off her foot. She died. That was in southern Texas, yeah. But these are all basically the same rock, but they have different colors and shapes depending on, what formed them over the years. That's one of the things we're studying with that. You can see big bags of kibble. These are really big units with a lot of that fine stuff. Back here we have all the faunal stuff. All the animal bone. And most of it, as you can see, is these great big drawers filled with little tiny bags with tiny, tiny fragments. In this case, burned turtle shell, which is actually the single most common thing you find on Clovis sites. We always call them big game hunters. They're around chasing mammoths. We have 15 mammoth kill sites. We have hundreds of sites with burned turtle shell. But you can see it's a lot of snail and little tiny fragments, and occasionally bigger ones. Like,
oh, wow.
And this one you gotta touch, because this, and you can see it's all shiny, that's from the B-72 acrolite. So most of this is kind of plastic now. We've been gradually conserving this one. But this is the lower mandible of a juvenile female Columbian mammoth. She would have been, as full grown, she would have been the largest elephant known. 16 feet tall at the shoulder, 22,000 pounds. But this one was probably only about 8 tons, so probably only about 15, 16,000 pounds. She wasn't fully grown yet. You can see her teeth here. And you can tell it's a mammoth because does it look like she swallowed a jogger? See a pair of tennis shoes? Yeah, if you see a pair of tennis shoes, it's mammoths. We have mammoths and mastodons in Texas. Mastodons are browsers, so they have little pyramidal teeth because these are grazers, so they got grinding teeth. And you can see her next teeth are coming in with this particular piece, and there's part of her shoulder down there. That was one of the first things found at Gault. It was surrounded by a Clovis point and 22 butchering tools. These are all broad spectrum hunters and gatherers, and they're all modern human beings. They're Homo sapiens sapiens. So this is most probably a mammoth kill site, one of only 15 known in the New World. Pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Wow.
Yeah. Really important thing about archaeology is if you don't know, get somebody who does. It's not how everybody works, but it's how we work. The stuff is one of a kind. It's always one of a kind. Even when we find other instances, you can say, yeah, this is kind of like that, but this was made by somebody here, and that was made by somebody there.
I got the chance to speak to Hannah, one of the undergraduate students there, and we discussed foreign programs and how important getting a geography degree is. She told me about the opportunities she has had and of her experiences in England. Through this trip, I was able to gain a better understanding of what taking on this career path meant, and how essential it is to learning about history later on. I learned that the size of an artifact does not matter, but the story it has to tell.
I always tell people, we find turtle bone in all these sites because, for God's sakes, it comes in its own bowl. And, a 5-year-old could pick up a turtle, right? It doesn't take Great Hunter to go pick up a turtle.